Hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily TA wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a slightly different perspective, the neoclassical one, asking ourselves each time what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming days. I do the show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of the beautiful Rocky Mountains. Folks, it was a quiet day for the most part for the last 4 or 5 days. Then today they kind of shook it up. We had the Dow down 117, 16,819. S&P, and that was about a 0.7% drop. The S&P's dropped almost the same, 12.5 points, 90 or 1950. Composite down 18, a little less than 0.5%, 43.50. NDX held up the best, just slightly down, 37.99.53, and the Russell was down the biggest, a percent, 11.75, closes 11.73.16. Elsewhere, gold flat. Actually, gold shows as $8 higher. I believe it was flat today. I don't think it was up. These quotes don't always catch them right at the end of the day, so maybe it was up afterwards. The bonds were pushing up today. A little bit of that came in early, and then more of it came in as the market sold off. Dollar was pretty much flat. Oil didn't sell off much, but the energy sector got hit pretty hard. So let's pop over to the charts. I didn't really have time to go through these tonight, so we'll go through them together and discover as we go. Okay, so the first thing I see here, so this is the S&P. This has been the strongest today, and actually yesterday. It was underperforming relative to the NDX. The NDX was doing better. So you had a swing point high, you broke over it, right? Now you're coming back within 6 bars. That's almost a coin flip when it does that, and as it's coming back, it's pushing down with volume compared to what it's coming into. So you got slightly more volume as you come back, and that's going to be a test, and it's going to be a test tomorrow. So you're going to look forward to see if it gets under this 1947.16 and closes under it. The breakout bar has got a low of 1939. So that is kind of the measure. The 1947 is the number. If it gets up underneath there, it likely says that you got some sort of a range trade starting to set up versus this uptrend that's been in place. Now, the one thing that does catch my eye too as I look at this is the type of reversal we had today, because if you look at those 2 bars, you went over, you're back under, you actually left volume higher, but you were testing over this bar as well. So from that perspective, you didn't leave volume higher because I believe actually yesterday this didn't even get to the high. Let me see if that high, 1963.91. Yeah, it didn't get to the high yesterday. So you tested over that high, you had less volume, you came back down, but on the push back down, it actually was expanding volume compared to what it was coming into, and it engulfed the last 3 bars. So when you look at all that in tandem, all of that's negative. That says this thing's going to test tomorrow. It's going to try to test and blow out this low tomorrow, and if so, I think that's going to stop this uptrend. We were wondering if it would stop. So now the question is, will it actually follow through tomorrow? So many times people draw these trend lines, and there's your trend line, and that pretty much says it all, right? If you're following the classical perspective, and that is that, oh, if it breaks that, it's going down. Well, yeah, maybe, but how far? I mean, what does that tell you? I'm not sure what that tells you. What it does tell you here is if it takes out the areas where buyers should step in, then that's telling you something. And just that trend line doesn't tell me much of anything. That's the S&P. So S&P negative. Let's look at the Dow. So the Dow tested over the high, had volume. At top was 978.02, and we didn't get to it. So the Dow actually didn't test the top. The Dow has no retest regenerate zone. The Dow's just kind of coming back with a little bit of expanding volume. I don't know if that one tells me anything either. So that doesn't really say anything. Here's the Nasdaq. Okay, so the Nasdaq also engulfs the last two bars, gets over the highs, back underneath them. So that's a test over the high, and that's still a negative picture, but not as negative as what we just looked at on the S&Ps. Your retest regenerate zone is here. It already had slightly tested into it already, so I think your real support isn't until you get back down to this level. So the Nasdaq probably is going to just follow whatever the S&P does. The S&P will be the story. The NDX was the strongest, and it too is already did a retest. Now this gets more interesting because here you already had a retest regen once, right, on the very next bar, and then actually the rest of these bars have done it. So now you push, you come back, volume expands. You don't have the engulfing situation, but you've already been testing into this for whatever this number of days is, four bars since the breakout, and you've been testing it all 4 bars. So this one's going to test again and try, you know, this is the 4th day. It's going to try to break out this bottom. 3783.90 is the number to be watching there, folks. One thing we've talked about before, and a lot of times people ask me, you know, what's the algorithm? How does this thing figure out where these support zones are? How does it know that that's where money should come in? Well, independent of how it knows, one thing you should realize, anytime it gets this far away, that's a problem. I mean, you want something to build up here and tell you there's support up here somewhere. You don't want to have to go down, in this case, you know, 100 points to find support. That's just crazy. In this case, it's actually 200 points from the top. That's, you know, that's like you got to drop 7% before you find support. That's just telling you that there's just not any structure up here of where you can expect the money to come in yet. Now, something will probably build out here as it gyrates, but right now there's just nothing up there. And so we'll see what develops tomorrow. If anything, you've actually got a couple high volume bars now, so you might actually get a support zone right at the lows of today come tomorrow. But that's a long way down. Let's look at the Russell. The Russell also sold off, and so the Russell's already in doing a retest regen as well. So this one had tested these tops now. Actually, this one has a lot going on too. So this top, 1189 and a quarter, 1193.96, 1193, didn't quite get to the top, or just missed it, right? So it tested 3 days, 4 bars now into this bar, the April 4th bar. That's the last bar of true significance, because it's a wide price spread and a reasonably, well, actually it's probably not going to be, yeah, it is actually, it's probably a high volume bar too. And so you've got a wide price spread, high volume bar that was anchoring that resistance up there. You test into it 2 times. Today was the 3rd. Still couldn't get over it, and just back the other way. So this one's going to test onto the bottom, and you're coming back with volume. And that's also not a good situation. Slightly, just like the S&P, this one looks almost exactly like the S&P. The only thing that's not quite as bad is it didn't do quite the engulfing sign that you got from the others. The engulfing is where, you know, the true engulfing is where you know, let's engulf this one. You open above it and you close below it. That engulfs it, right? So you can see how this one opened here, went up, and then closed down here. So from that perspective, it's not really an engulfing bar from the definitions I've read and I tend to pay attention to. Okay, so you know, any way you cut it, index-wise, the market wants to try to trade lower tomorrow. Let's take a look at the sectors and see what they look like and see if they are telling us the same thing. Okay, so let's start. We'll just start at the top and run through these and see what they look like. So the IYT first. Yeah, I don't know. That one doesn't say much. That one's just coming into an area that it may find. Well, it came into an area it could have found support today. Didn't. You know, it looks to me like it's going to try to get lower to the bottom of these bars. We're somewhere between 143.5 down to 143. So IYT probably is going to trade lower. Let's look at the SOX now. Remember, the SOX has finished off ABCD structures, had volume yesterday at the highs, closed bad, and today comes off with volume. And this one, again, look at where your support zone is. You don't really find a place that money should come in until you get way down, and way down is like 8%, 7-8%. That's a lot of air, and that's why you don't chase these when they get going this far, because more than likely, you know, the hard thing about it, and I've done this too many times in my career that I just don't even do it anymore. And that is let's say you get up to, say, I don't know, this price point, and you just finally say, I just can't stand it. You know, maybe it's on this bar right here. You say, I just can't stand it. I'm going to buy it anyway, right? It's never going to stop. You know, or even if you did it back here on this bar when it came off that little retrace, it wouldn't stop. So what are you going to do? You get $2 to the top, and that is if you bottom tick this one and you top tick that, what are you going to get? I don't know, maybe it's $1.75 or something on an $84 stock. So you get what, 1%? Or that's even if you bottom and top ticket. So you're going to get a 1% gain, and what are you risking? You're risking a loss, because more than likely at some point between there it's going to come back. You're probably going to end up losing on the trade, right? Because you're not going to top ticket to start with, and you're not going to bottom ticket down here. So it just inevitably, those trades lose because the risk-reward proposition just isn't there. And I know it's extremely hard to just forego those things, but you just have to. And you have to look elsewhere. When they extend, when they finish off ABCD structures, or they're getting close to doing it, there's just no reason to chase them anymore. And the only way the market can continue higher is for that money to come out of here and rotate it into something else. And that's especially true here on the energy. These were the energy sector was the weakest. And I don't have a quote on this one tonight. Looks like it didn't get, oh, I didn't get to the energy sector. I'm still, here we go, energy sector. All right, so here's the energy. This was the weakest one all day long. So what was the deal here? Okay, so this one had already finished off 2 ABCD structures. It finished off ABCD structures multiple times on the way up, the latest one being this one. And it also finished off an ABCD structure on the weekly. That one, if we look at the weekly, that one actually finished off about the same price point. Got up there, did a doji yesterday. Didn't tell you. I mean, a doji can be a turn, but you don't know if it's going to be a turn. There's been dojis all the way up on this thing. So it can be a turn, and it is a turn if it does turn, and it did. And the volume comes out of this thing. And I didn't see any news today, you know, saying, you know, there's peace in Iraq, or there's, now we did get a piece of news out of Russia that, you know, Putin said, I don't need the powers, the special powers to invade the Ukraine anymore, repeal them. So maybe that was the news, right? But I don't think oil went up because of the Ukraine. Oil went up because of Iraq, and I don't know that Iraq changed, and we didn't see oil prices come off. So why does this sector get blown away? Well, because they were chasing this thing all the way up, momentumizing it, right? And it finished off all these structures. I mean, yeah, if it comes back, holds here somewhere and goes back up, it's a different story. But this came off with volume. This thing's going deeper. It's going to come all the way back and probably test into this area, at least and you can see the support zone's way down on this one as well. So energy sector, transport's not so much. Stocks, energy, those, the money has to find another home. Where's it going to go? Well, we were thinking maybe the XLB. Let's see what the XLB looks like. So if I go to the XLB, yeah, I don't know what this one. This one still looks okay, but it's not ideal. Tested the top again, couldn't get over it. Comes off a little bit of volume. It's not bad, but it's not great. So money could rotate there. XLF is another place money could rotate. And tonight, XLF at top is 22.93. So it tested the top 22.25 into 3.22. So it tested the top, failed. That one's also going to try to pull back some more. So it doesn't look like it's coming in there tomorrow, although this is still a decent candidate. XLI, this one has been coming off and now is coming off for real. It's coming into support, doesn't have as much volume, still wants to test into this retest regen. And actually that one had already did a retest regen. So this is just coming back into support. Yeah, just coming back into support. And potentially a little ABCD structure now. Not a deep one, but an ABCD structure nevertheless to get you down into this area. So that one looks to come off more. So that one also not looking so sharp tonight. XLK, volume comes out of it. Okay, so this low on that bar is 38.02. Gets underneath it, closes under it. This one's going to test into this zone tomorrow. And there's not a lot of volume on that zone, so, and you got two swing points there, so that's going to be a big test for it. So XLK, going to try to test a little bit lower. XLP, XLU had some rotation into them. Okay, so this one tested the low today, held it. That one looks ready to bounce. XLU. And actually XLU held up pretty good today given the way the market was trading. That one actually can bounce from right here. It did a retest and is trying to regenerate. Whether it does or not, we'll see tomorrow. But that one looks like it's in not bad shape. Biotech was really strong today. This was another candidate for rotating money. And now this one's coming back to do a retest regen already. 60.41, and we're testing into it 2 days now. That one will test some more tomorrow. Doesn't look too bad. XLY, and this one still is holding. So the sectors don't look as bad, but they do complement what you see over in the indexes, and that is that it looks like another day of some sort of pressure tomorrow on the markets. Folks, we have had, and you know, I don't want to be too negative here. We've had many times situations just like this where you get selling, right? Looks like it's finally going to come unwound, and then the next thing you know, 3 or 4 bars later, you're back up at the highs. So, you know, yeah, tomorrow is probably going to follow through, at least in the morning. But do the sellers show up at lower prices? That's always the issue. And most of the time they don't. They did earlier this year. They did back in, you know, March, April. Started even in May they still were doing it. But for the most part, March and April is probably the only 2 months we've seen now since 2 years or a year and a half. So yeah, maybe we're getting to that point where it is going to roll a little bit. But, you know, so far, you know, one example out of 2 years is not a great record to get all excited and start, you know, throwing out everything, I guess is the way I'd say it. It's a little bit early for that kind of action. We did see a nice big roll in the GDX. Volume came out of this. This thing got a big engulfing bar. This one's going to come lower. It's going to test back into the retest regen zone. Looks like it's going to get back within 6 bars, so it can test all the way to the bottom of the zone. This one, this one, just like the others before, you know, that we've looked at, this one was even more extended than everything else, right? I mean, here's your ABCD structure. I mean, it finished it off. Well, it's not that bad. It finished it, you know, a little bit more than it should have, but not too bad. Coming off hard. I believe the GDXJ probably looks worse. Let's look at that one. This is even with gold not doing much. Yeah, so the GDXJ was already struggling, closes the gap today. So your big bar leaves it behind and it leaves volume at the top. That's a good thing, right? So it's going to get a deeper retrace. It's already coming back almost into this high. It had done it previously. So this one had already retested, regenerated higher, now coming back for the second test. Let's look at the gold market itself. Yeah, so that tested the top today, so that's finally a failure. So you finally got a failure here, 127.23, 127.32. This one's going to finally come back. And let's see if silver, which had been the gung-ho one, also fails. Also fails across all three bars. That one's going to finally come back. So it looks like your gold, your silver, and of course the stocks themselves are going to come back in. And they need to, because they were way overdone on the upside, especially in the silver market. Let's look at the bonds. The bonds popped up today, and they're back up there testing again. And they had a little better volume today. So this range at some point is going to break. And so far, it hasn't. And you know, now the question is, will it break the top side? It tried to break the bottom side, couldn't. So here we come back at the top. They fooled me here because I thought they were going to trade lower, but they didn't. And that's a testament to the trend, because the trend has been up here and on the intermediate term time frame. It's going to try to break it out again. If it does, you know, and I think tomorrow it has a better shot, because now you actually have weakness in the equities probably tomorrow. So the real test is, can you get over this resistance zone anchored here by this swing point high? Excuse me. If it does, you know, then it can go up and try to get to the high again. That's going to be a tall order, though. A, to get over this, B, to get over that one. So bonds also echoing the weakness in stocks today. Dollar didn't do much. We saw, had a reversal though. Let me see. So the FXE must reverse back the other way. Yeah, boy, that's a struggle over there though. I know the pound had been, you know, surging, and ever since the comments yesterday, I think this thing got hammered. Not as bad as you would have thought, but yeah, it did come off the comments of their genius banker over there. Let's see what the overseas markets look like. So, is there anything? Oh, let me look at one other thing here. Let me look at the oil market. Yeah, see, that's not even hardly coming off. So it probably comes back and tests this low before it's over, but that certainly wasn't the reason the market sold off today, and I saw some commentary to that effect. Okay, let's look over at the overseas markets and see what we got there. So let me pop into to the world markets, and let's start with China. So let's go to the 8 shares. So as an inside bar held, I would expect that to test that low again tonight and see if it can break it or not. If China holds, certainly that's a good thing, because they have been the weakness over there. Here's the Hong Kong. Looks almost exactly the same. I also expect they'll probably test. Both of them are testing into this bar from April 10th, or at least whatever that equivalent bar is. I think it was the 10th also. So that's where they're trying to test into. They pushed into it, had decent volume, got a bounce. I would expect they try to push into it again. Over in Europe, so we had volume come off in the CACs, and inside day, that's going to test those support zones again tomorrow, it looks like. And let's see about the DAX. DAX doesn't look that bad at all. DAX is just range trading, waiting to go higher. How about the chip stocks in Taiwan? So they started coming off yesterday, inside day. They probably get some more heat tonight. They'll test into this low tonight at least, 92.04. And let me look over at emerging markets as a general group. Still range trading, so that doesn't look too bad. And then one other one is there it is, the Nikkei in 225. That was still at the highs. Yeah, but that's not going to be able to get over the highs. That one also is going to retrace and retest regen off this high. So, you know, it's not a major issue, but there is probably weakness, going to see some weakness tomorrow. If those retest regenerate zones fail, you know, then that squeeze higher into the end of the month is going to be a long shot. If they hold, then you've got a decent chance that you really do get a squeeze for the mere fact that nobody will sell at lower prices. So anyway, that kind of sums it up. Let's see if we got any quick questions I can answer here. You can always text me 303-912 9110. You can send email to support at tatoday.com, or you can type in any questions you have. And I don't see any questions in either of the three places, so it looks like my job is done. Folks, tomorrow, I don't know that it's a critical day, but it's an important day. Anytime you get a sell-off, what you want to see is you want to see sellers disappear as prices get lower. That tells you that they're unwilling to sell at lower and lower prices, and if that's true, it gives you a decent indication that the selling isn't going to continue. That's particularly important when you get to key support zones, whether they be retest regenerate zones or just plain support zones like you see here, way down here. The fact that they're a long way away really brings more power to the retest regens off the prior highs. What does it mean to retest and regenerate? Well, if you get over a high and you come back in, it is the natural place to buy again. I mean, how many times have you seen something run away, come back, and you say, okay, this is the spot? Why? Because I don't have to give it much room if I'm playing it very short term. I can put a stop very close underneath. My reward to risk is the highs, right, versus my risk, and you can see how it works. 2 to 1 this way, you know, versus that way. That's why they do it. That's why it's a natural place. That's why you look at it and you see what happens when you get there. Folks, thanks for joining me. That went quick. Have yourself a great night. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm LA. This is, and it was, your daily TA wrap. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Good night.